Learn to be super successful. Subscribe to my channel, Meathead. And none of you fall into this category, but, when I was young, I was considered too slick. I had an answer for everything. So you won't have a problem dumbing down because you're already at that level. But I was too slick, and so I had to slow down. I had to talk slower, and have to think for an answer, which isn't me. I know the answer before you ask the question. But and I would give that advice when you're adding people to your board. If some of the board members seem too good to be true, pass, because they, even though they may be legit, you may actually get an Abraham Lincoln or some guy like that, but the people won't believe it. There is, just like I told you, you can overdo forcing your kids to do shit, and unfortunately, in hindsight, I drove my kids too hard. Now they won't put it on a tuxedo because they had to get dressed every night. Tuxedo for dinner. You have to bribe my kids to get dressed up. And a few other things that I did that I overdid. You take 10 pills, I need 100. I'm sure if I was a drug addict, I would have died from an overdose a long time ago. 2 shots, I'll take 8. So getting back to the funding, and this is not a new idea, but a lot of people, the guys that I talked to at fucking BP Canada have heard this pitch. They're still there. But there's still a stigma. A lot of the big movies, Tom Cruise, is that right? Tom Cruise uses crowdfunding for his movies. Mission Impossible 46 or whatever we're at now. But there's certain things, that they're too soon for their time. Crowdfunding has been more or less legitimate for a long time. No, you can take an option. No. A lot of the land still isn't under contract, mineral lease in Canada. The government still has, it's 40% of the lease for minerals. Now, that may be 5 or 10 years old, but I know they have a big chunk of the mineral rights are still owned by the government. Just like in the United States. When they say drill, baby, drill for 4 or 5 years, 4 years for sure under Biden, they weren't assigning any government leases, so you could have the mineral rights. And that's what they were complaining about. Because the United States has massive reserves that have untapped, and that's why we went from 3rd or 4th in reserves to number 1 in production, daily production. I think we produce 12 or 13 million barrels a day. Saudi says they cheat, and they all cheat except us. The Canadians, English, and us are the only ones that tell the real numbers. And look what where it's gotten us. OPEC, but getting back to Canada, I'd be highly surprised, and a lot of those reserves are under Indian land. And one of the things that when I talked to the BP guys, it was even worse than that, when you're no cameras, no iPhones, no this and that. Fuck them, we should have fucking slaughtered them like we had the chance back in 1780 or whatever it was, okay? But the indigenous, both in that country and in the UK, not the UK, excuse me, the United States and Canada, they play that indigenous card. And they want reparations and, all that stuff. But not easily. The first one, just like the first option I took public, maybe hard work, but you get some real bright, smart rocket science, not rocket science, but super smart guys. And you need they call them influencers now. But whoever is the king of exploration in Canada. Now, along those lines, I think the reason why the new CEO of Warren Buffett is a Canadian exploration guy, that's exactly what they're going to do. Clean, Mr. Goody Two-Shoes, wouldn't say shit if it was in his mouth, supposedly. There's nobody that rose up in 25 years in exploration that doesn't use bad words. It's not possible. But I believe that that's one of the aces. And if you've seen, the Anadarko and Occidental, all Buffett has normally got his thumb or his finger in these deals, because he also knows, although he doesn't say it, for sure in his lifetime, because he's old, but in your lifetime, we're never going to stop using hydrocarbons. Not going to happen. And that's not counting all the hydrocarbons that are under the water yet, that we now, since the North Sea, since Bob Dyke, my esteemed former colleague, found the North Sea, and that's in 25,000 foot, which was the science could support that then. But now I don't know how deep they can go now. But I know it's a hell of a lot fucking deeper than 25,000 feet. And it used to be every 1,000 foot, it's 2 times harder, or every 10,000. I don't. There used to be a formula, but it is because the water pressure, the pipe's got to be stronger. You got to set more cement, but you also fuck up the seabed more. And now nobody wants to fuck up the seabed because of some fucking slimy thing under there, And so, but you got a lot more things to fight to get these super projects done, because the environmentalists. And, the Earth's through. We're 7.2 billion years old. Or, no, 13. Yeah. And man's been on it about, 3 or 4, some form of man has been on it 250 to 350,000 years. But we're through. I mean, who gives a fuck what you do to the seabed? Now, I'm not, don't cut that out, Cat, but I'm going to take a bunch of shit, about that from environmentalists. And maybe the French, just because, But remember, Charles de Gaulle touched me in a good way, patted me on my little head. And and that plus $7 can buy a coffee at Starbucks. Did I answer your question? Okay, you'll have the money to do that. Yep. Now, and that's how, when you think like that, and you think just like Elon Musk, and that's how these big deals started with one moron that, or some not so moron that, has got bigger dreams, and where he and I come from, they don't have those kind of dreams. Yeah.
When I said buy an exploration company, you cut me off and said no.
No. Who's the king of JVs? Keep asking me about JVs. That's when you get a JV, because you don't have the equipment and all the shit. Because there's plenty of. There's the best place to go for that stuff in Canada. I don't know where that is. I used to know in the North Sea, places like that. You can just scrape with a fucking, a shovel in Saudi Arabia. Throw a dart, and you can find oil there. But there are places, deep sea deep water exploration, where we're supposed to be liquid in the center of the Earth. I don't know if that's true or not. Let's just say it is. And the molten this, that, and the other thing, and then 250 million years ago, 450 million years ago, when the dinosaurs and all that kind of stuff. There are places that are better to drill, or there's a higher probability, instead of 1 out of 22 is pretty shitty odds. 1 out of 22. 22 wells. 1 out of 22 will be a discovery of some sort. And that only means a show of oil. It doesn't mean it's productive oil. There's not oil to produce, but that is a show of oil. But a show of oil, a geologist would jack off on the table in front of his granddaughter. Because that means where there's a show of oil, that means that that's either close or it once was. When you're deep drilling in the ocean, nobody has pulled that out yet. Whereas if you're in Oklahoma, there's a pretty good chance that it had been drained into someplace else as the porosity and the viscosity of the oil. But when it's in the water and you get a show, they go fucking nuts. Because that means you're the first person there. And there is. And so then a lot of oil exploration money has been pissed in the water, pun intended, looking for that. But it's the only game in town where there's still gunslingers. You make it big. Somebody brought in several hundred million barrels here in Texas, Oklahoma a year or two ago, and it'll take them years to develop, years and years before it's at a pump as gasoline or something. But those guys are Exxon and the big boys are in there trying to buy them out for tens or hundreds of millions, and they haven't set up not one drill bit yet. One drill bit. And when you're in that business, you need an exploration team that has actually found some fucking oil, some hydrocarbons, or as I've said on the YouTube, some grease. Most of the grease has been found by the geologists today, and not enough grease to comb your hair. One guy. That's the joke used to be, And then I had the founder of the North Sea. So, and I rode that poor fucker till he was dead. I'd rest your soul, Bob. It's your chairman times 10 or 20 or 50. Oh, Bob Dyke. And he used to go to sleep during the board meetings and, Bob, it's time to vote. Somebody'd say, whatever the chairman says, which was me. His nose was so big, it was like J.P. Morgan. He couldn't get a whiskey glass up. I worked him to death. We got a few people that I've allegedly worked to death. No. I expect results instantaneously, and I demand them, and if you can't produce, you're out. And that's about as popular today as a turd in a punch bowl. And all the mini-me's that are out there that we've alluded to try to start that way and pretty much fail. Because the guys say, fuck you, you're just a kid, you haven't done shit. And then most of you don't want to give away shares. It's already come out, but in your own words, you don't want to give away shares. Or you're giving, how do I get the shares back when I want to throw them out? And you want to do it on your own. I mean, and well, why would I do all this for nothing, asshole? You're not a fart in the wind. So there's a dichotomy from the very beginning. It's tough to get those world-class guys. Now, in my judgment, he's going overboard, but they're not going to leave because they're not getting paid. And even though in my judgment, they're getting paid peanuts, to them it's a lot of money. Yep. So some of the guys that fail because they're not sharing the profits. But one of those webinars that you see I have, and the lion's dragging the antelope, and then the pride feeds on the antelope. Now you guys don't want the pride to feed on the antelope. Just you want to feed on the antelope. And you won't make it to the big time. Big time meaning not maybe generational wealth in 20, 30 years, but not generational wealth in 30 months. Remember, the model is built for one a month. Yes, sir.
So going back to crowdfunding, I'm going to have a face-to-face meeting with the working interest oil deal I'm involved in.
Correct.
And I'm going to either you cough up the money, which he has access to, or we go to crowdfunding. We only need $750. Guy that drilled the hole, it's 2 miles deep. He spent $2.5 million.
That's 10,000 feet.
Okay, so long story short, there's 4 oil zones. We only touched the bottom one.
Oh, no, that's not possible.
Anyway.
Okay, let me stop you.
Okay.
Whoever told you that was full of shit. You can't go through 3 zones and you're the bottom without touching the other 3. I know, but don't try to explain to me about drilling. I was in that business for a long time. So they would have tests every 50 feet, and they're pulling up this thing near the drilling column, and they're testing. Okay, they test it with water. Does the water come back clean? Does it come back just full of sand and shit? or does it come back with traces of oil? So they couldn't have gone through 3 zones without seeing some test. Okay, you're trying to produce out of the bottom one. And if you know for a fact, I'd like to know how. They must have tested. When they test the well, and they test the well every 30, 45 minutes, because depending on how fast you're drilling, you're rotating to the right. You know, you're either in soft shale, you're in the sand, you're in, hard rock, whatever. And oil rises to the top. Okay, we're getting back to your thing. So you got oil in the bottom.
Okay, so here's a story.
Okay.
When I was there,
YouTube, that's enough.